Halloween in the 1950s and 60s looked innocent. Jack-o'-lanterns glowing, kids running with paper bags. But hidden in those candlelit nights were traditions so strange. Some were banned, and others nearly turned dangerous. Homemade treats glued children's hands together. Costumes nearly suffocated them. And stick around, because before the halfway point you'll hear about one Halloween ritual so bizarre, it was outlawed nationwide. Homemade costumes from scratch. Before shelves overflowed with plastic masks, kids had to invent their own. A sheet became a ghost. A box became a robot. Crooked stitches, smeared glue, cardboard wings. Nothing looked perfect, but that was the charm. Kitchen tables turned into workshops. Scissors snapped, glue dripped, needles pricked. Every outfit was unique, stitched together by imagination more than skill. But they weren't safe. Masks slipped, hems tore. Some left kids gasping for air as they raced house to house. Still, the thrill was too strong to resist. And one store-bought costume that followed didn't just fail. It nearly suffocated children. Parents still bought it, year after year. Ben Cooper plastic costumes. By the late 50s, homemade had competition. Ben Cooper flooded dime stores with boxed costumes. Bright vinyl smocks and brittle masks. For a couple of dollars, any kid could be a superhero overnight. Slip it on, tie a string, instant transformation. But the magic cracked fast. Masks cut skin, elastic snapped, breathing holes fogged with every gasp. Some kids ripped them off in minutes. Still, parents loved the price. Millions wore them anyway. And the treat that came next wasn't dangerous, it was worse. It literally glued children's hands together. Papier-mâché jack-o'-lanterns. Before plastic pumpkins, porches glowed with papier-mâché jack-o'-lanterns. Parents and kids dipped strips of newspaper in glue, shaping crooked grins by hand. The results were fragile, but magical. Ghostly light flickering through the thin paper walls. The danger was obvious. A sudden rain reduced them to pulp. One bump crushed hours of work. Worse, real candles sometimes licked too close. More than one porch nearly caught fire. They were messy, risky, unforgettable. But the next Halloween favorite wasn't fragile at all. It was heavy, sticky, and could trap kids in ways parents never saw coming. Trick or treat for UNICEF. Not every kid in the 50s and 60s knocked on doors just for candy. Some carried little orange UNICEF boxes, collecting pennies and nickels for children overseas. Coins clinked against lollipops, and suddenly Halloween was more than sugar. It was a lesson in empathy. The idea was simple. Thousands of tiny donations adding up to real change. Parents praised the effort. Neighbors felt proud to drop coins into the box. And kids felt a strange mix of charity and competition, whose box would be heaviest by night's end. But those rattling coins also came with problems. Some boxes were stolen. Others burst open, scattering money across the sidewalk. And the next tradition? It didn't jingle with coins. It froze kids stiff, right down to their bones. Candy apples. Sweet, glossy, and almost too shiny to bite, candy apples were a staple of Halloween in the 50s and 60s. Behind the style was a hidden story about the decade itself. A time when homemade treats were celebrated, and every bite carried the scent of sugar, caramel, and autumn air. Kids would line up at kitchen counters or local fairs, watching parents dip crisp apples into molten candy, twirling them until they gleamed like little red lanterns. Candy apples weren't just tasty. They were a ritual. Families gathered to make them. Friends traded apples with unique flavors, and the occasional sticky fingers only added to the fun. Over time, store-bought candies and individually wrapped chocolates replaced these labor-intensive delights, and the homemade version became a rare treat. And just when you thought Halloween's flavors couldn't get any stranger, a sticky surprise from the past waits in the next forgotten tradition. Homemade popcorn balls. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. Sticky, golden popcorn balls were a Halloween staple in the 50s and 60s, rolled by hand and wrapped carefully in wax paper. Kitchens smelled of melted sugar, butter, and corn, while children eagerly watched their treats take shape. Each ball was slightly different, some perfectly round, others a bit lopsided. But that imperfection added to their charm. For families, it was just normal life. But today, it feels strange. Making popcorn balls wasn't just about the snack. It was a bonding ritual. Parents and kids laughed over sticky fingers, swapped flavors, and proudly carried the finished treats around the neighborhood or to school parties. While store-bought candy has largely replaced them, these sticky treasures remain a symbol of a hands-on, communal Halloween. And just when you think treats couldn't get any craftier, the next quirky tradition holds a hidden surprise: neighborhood haunted garages and basements. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. In the 50s and 60s, many families turned their garages and basements into haunted attractions for Halloween. Cardboard tombstones, fake cobwebs, and creaky homemade props transformed ordinary rooms into eerie wonderlands. Children and neighbors wandered through these spooky spaces, shrieking with delight at dangling skeletons or hidden jack-in-the-box surprises. For families, it was just normal life, preparing scares after dinner, testing flickering lights, and timing eerie sounds perfectly. It was as much about creativity and community as it was about giving kids a fright. These homemade haunted spots brought neighbors together and sparked friendly competition between streets. Today, such hands-on haunted houses are rare, replaced by commercial setups or digital thrills, leaving only fond memories of homemade ingenuity. And just when you think Halloween decorations couldn't get any more inventive, the next tradition carried a twist that blurred fun and fright in unexpected ways. Halloween parades. What was once everywhere has almost vanished without a trace. In the 50s and 60s, towns and schools hosted grand Halloween parades, where children marched in handmade costumes, floats rolled down streets, and the community gathered to cheer. The excitement was contagious. Bands played, teachers waved from decorated wagons, and kids competed for the most creative outfits. For families, it was just normal life. Neighbors packed the sidewalks, parents snapped photos, and children felt the thrill of being part of something larger than their block. Parades brought everyone together, blending pageantry, community spirit, and seasonal fun in a way that felt magical. Today, most of these events have disappeared or shrunk to small school hallways, replaced by indoor parties and mall trick-or-treating. And in the shadows of that festive music, there was always one playful scare waiting to catch everyone off guard: taffy pulls. To understand the 60s, you can't ignore this curious feature. Long before individually wrapped candies dominated Halloween, families and friends gathered around tables for taffy pulls. Sticky, chewy strands of homemade taffy were stretched and folded again and again, with laughter filling kitchens as children and parents competed to see who could make the longest or smoothest pull. The ritual was messy, but joyful. Fingers were coated in sugar, and the aroma of butter and corn syrup lingered in the air. Kids eagerly waited for a taste, savoring the chewy sweetness, while parents reveled in the shared creativity. It was more than candy. It was a hands-on, communal experience that built memories alongside the treats themselves. Over time, convenience replaced tradition, and store-bought sweets took over. And somewhere between the sticky strands and laughter, one little twist would sneakily leave everyone grinning with surprise. Schoolroom parties with bobbing for apples. This detail says more about the 60s than you might expect. Back then, schoolrooms transformed into tiny Halloween wonderlands. Desks pushed aside, decorations hung from the ceiling, and excited children lined up for the classic game of bobbing for apples. Faces splashed in water. Laughter echoed through the classroom, and every successful bite felt like a small triumph. For families and teachers, it was just normal life, a chance to celebrate the season with students in a playful, hands-on way. Teachers supervised, parents contributed homemade treats, and the scent of apples and cinnamon filled the air. The game wasn't perfect. Spills and splashes were inevitable, but that only added to the fun and camaraderie. Today, hygiene concerns and allergies have mostly ended the tradition, replaced by prepackaged treats and games. And just when the laughter settled, one mischievous surprise would quietly make everyone jump in delight. Halloween masquerade balls! At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. Community halls and school gyms in the 50s and 60s came alive with Halloween masquerade balls, where kids and adults danced under twinkling lights, music filling the room. Costumes ranged from elegant to outrageous, and prizes were awarded for the most creative ensembles, fueling a playful competition. For families, it was just normal life, a night of fun, socializing, and celebrating the season together. Parents watched proudly as children twirled in homemade dresses or ghostly sheet costumes, while friends whispered guesses about each other's secret identities. The energy was infectious, creating memories that lingered long after the music stopped. Today, such neighborhood balls are rare, replaced by school parties or commercial events. And amid the laughter and music, one clever disguise always managed to surprise everyone in a way no one expected. Trick-or-treating without parents. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. In the 50s and 60s, children often roamed neighborhoods freely on Halloween night, paper bags in hand, racing from porch to porch without adults by their side. The thrill of independence was as exciting as the candy they collected. Streets echoed with laughter, playful screams, and the occasional clatter of tin noisemakers as kids tested their courage and boundaries. For families, it was just normal life. Neighbors kept watch, communities trusted one another, and children developed a sense of responsibility and adventure. The experience was as much about freedom as it was about treats, building memories that couldn't be bought. Today, safety concerns have made unsupervised trick-or-treating almost unheard of, leaving only stories of daring adventures under autumn moonlight. And somewhere between darkened lawns and shadowy corners, one unexpected encounter could turn a simple night into a legendary tale. Woolworth's Halloween aisles. Behind the style was a hidden story about the decade itself. For kids in the 50s and 60s, a trip to Woolworth's wasn't just shopping, it was an adventure. Shelves were stocked with orange and black decorations, plastic pumpkins, fake cobwebs, and inexpensive masks. The aisles buzzed with excitement as children and parents picked out everything needed to transform a home for Halloween. For families, it was just normal life. A quick after-school stop could supply an entire season's worth of treats and decor. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Flimsy plastic, decorations that bent or broke easily, and lines that tested a child's patience. Yet, those imperfections made the experience feel authentic, a tactile part of the holiday ritual. Today, such 5 and dime Halloween aisles have nearly disappeared. And in the quiet corners of the old store, one particular shelf always seemed to hide a tiny surprise no one ever expected: wax lips and mustaches. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. Halloween in the 50s and 60s wasn't just about sweets. It was about silly fun, and nothing captured that better than wax lips and mustaches. Children wore bright red lips or comical mustaches, snapping photos, making faces, and laughing until candy time finally arrived. The novelty of pretending to be someone or something else was irresistible. For families, it was just normal life, a quick gag before unwrapping chocolates, a way to add humor and playfulness to the holiday. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Wax stuck to fingers, lips sometimes twisted awkwardly, and mustaches slipped during fits of laughter. Still, the experience made Halloween interactive and unforgettable. Today, these waxy novelties are rare, relics of a time when candy doubled as costume. And hidden among those playful disguises, one mischievous design always managed to make everyone burst into giggles. Spooky Super 8 home movies. What was once everywhere has almost vanished without a trace. In the 50s and 60s, families captured Halloween memories on Super 8 cameras, filming costumed children running through the yard, bobbing for apples, or laughing in homemade masks. The grainy, flickering footage added a haunting charm, making every ghost and witch feel alive on the screen. For families, it was just normal life, documenting milestones, sharing laughs, and preserving the creativity of their children. These short films were replayed at family gatherings, eliciting laughter, nostalgia, and the occasional jump from a well-timed scare. Parents took pride in capturing the joy and chaos of the holiday, while kids loved seeing themselves in motion, performing little Halloween sketches for the camera. Today, Super 8 footage is a rarity, replaced by digital videos, but the spirit of capturing Halloween magic lingers, and tucked into the corners of these old reels, a tiny, unexpected detail often made viewers double-take. Fortune-telling games! This detail says more about the 60s than you might expect. Halloween parties weren't only about candy and costumes. They were filled with playful divination. Kids peeled apples, dropped pins into oranges, or traced their future lover's initials in wax, all in the spirit of harmless fortune-telling. Giggles and whispers accompanied each prediction, blending curiosity, superstition, and social fun in a way that made Halloween parties uniquely interactive. For families, it was just normal life. A simple way to entertain guests, spark conversation, and let children explore imagination and mystery. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Sticky wax, sharp pins, and sometimes wildly inaccurate predictions. Yet those small rituals left lasting memories, embedding a sense of magic and wonder in the holiday. Today, these games have mostly vanished, replaced by packaged party favors and modern apps, and hidden among the spinning apples and wax letters. One tiny trick often made everyone gasp and laugh at the same time. Haunted storytelling circles. To understand the 60s, you can't ignore this curious feature. Before television and streaming, families and friends would gather around candles or lanterns to share ghost stories. Shadows danced on walls as voices whispered tales of spirits, witches, and mysterious happenings, each storyteller adding their own flair and suspense. Children leaned in close, hearts racing, while adults savored the thrill of crafting fear in a safe, intimate setting. For families, it was just normal life, an evening ritual that combined imagination, social bonding, and a touch of fright. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Little ones might be too scared to sleep, and smoke from candles occasionally filled the room. Yet those evenings created lasting memories, teaching storytelling, suspense, and shared enjoyment of the eerie and unknown. Today, such intimate gatherings are rare, replaced by screens and pre-recorded scares. And in the flickering shadows, one whispered story always seemed to linger a little too long. Bing Crosby and Boris Karloff TV specials. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. In the 50s and 60s, families gathered around their black and white televisions to watch Halloween specials hosted by stars like Bing Crosby and Boris Karloff. These broadcasts blended music, comedy, and spooky tales, creating an evening of shared entertainment that felt both glamorous and cozy. For families, it was just normal life. Living rooms filled with laughter, suspense, and applause for favorite performers. Kids whispered behind their hands, pretending to be scared, while adults enjoyed the clever humor and charm of the era's television magic. These specials created a shared cultural experience, uniting audiences across towns and neighborhoods. Today, such holiday variety shows are a rarity, replaced by streaming channels and on-demand programming. And somewhere between the catchy songs and ghostly tales, one little segment always made viewers squirm and grin at the same time. Candlelit paper bag lanterns. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. In the 50s and 60s, children and families crafted simple paper bag lanterns, placing small candles inside to light walkways and front porches. The soft glow from these homemade luminaries cast dancing shadows across sidewalks, creating a magical, slightly eerie atmosphere that announced Halloween night. For families, it was just normal life. arranging the bags carefully, cutting shapes into the paper for whimsical faces, and watching the flickering flames breathe life into the night. The lanterns were fragile and sometimes toppled in wind, but that unpredictability only added to their charm. Today, LED lights and plastic alternatives have replaced the delicate paper bags, leaving only nostalgic memories of candlelit streets. And, amid the gentle flicker, one lantern always seemed to cast a shadow, just a little stranger than the rest, hinting at secrets waiting to be discovered. Door-to-door tricks. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Before Halloween became strictly about candy, children in the 50s and 60s sometimes played pranks if households came up short. Toilet-papered trees, soaped windows, and clever little scares added a mischievous edge to the night. Kids balanced excitement and creativity, always careful not to go too far, while neighbors braced for surprises, with a mix of amusement and mild exasperation. For families, it was just normal life. A playful reminder of older, more daring traditions where a clever trick was just as important as a treat. Children learned negotiation, timing, and ingenuity, all under the guise of harmless fun. Today, most pranks have been replaced by organized trick-or-treating and community rules. And hidden among the laughter and echoes of footsteps, one particularly clever trick always managed to leave even the grown-ups chuckling. Seasonal scary comic books. To understand the 50s, you can't ignore this curious feature. Every Halloween, comic book stands were stocked with special horror issues, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and other spine-chilling titles. Kids eagerly flipped through the pages, thrilled by ghouls, monsters, and suspenseful tales, often reading under the covers with a flashlight long after bedtime. For families, it was just normal life. A way to celebrate the season through stories that combined imagination, thrill, and a touch of fright. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. Some parents frowned on the blood and scares, worried they were too intense for children, while kids couldn't get enough of the macabre art and twisted humor. Today, such seasonal comic traditions are rare, replaced by digital media and graphic novels. And somewhere between the inked panels and eerie plots, one hidden twist always made readers double-check the shadows in their room. Tin noisemakers. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. In the 50s and 60s, Halloween wasn't complete without tin noisemakers. Rattles, clappers, and whistles adorned with spooky designs. Children shook, spun, and squeaked them with glee, creating a lively symphony of Halloween chaos that echoed through neighborhoods and schoolyards. For families, it was just normal life, a simple, joyful way to add sound and excitement to the holiday. Parents smiled as kids ran around making as much noise as possible, while friends tried to outdo each other with the loudest or most surprising effects. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. The tin sometimes bent, whistles squeaked out of tune, and neighbors occasionally complained. Yet the vibrant clamor became part of the Halloween soundtrack, unforgettable and unmistakable. Today, these tin classics are rare, replaced by cheap plastic noisemakers. And tucked among the jingles and rattles, one tiny device always had a mischievous surprise for anyone brave enough to listen. Tin noisemakers. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was much more. In the 50s and 60s, Halloween wasn't complete without tin noisemakers. Rattles, clappers, and whistles adorned with spooky designs. Children shook, spun, and squeaked them with glee, creating a lively symphony of Halloween chaos that echoed through neighborhoods and schoolyards. For families, it was just normal life, a simple, joyful way to add sound and excitement to the holiday. Parents smiled as kids ran around making as much noise as possible, while friends tried to outdo each other with the loudest or most surprising effects. The charm was obvious, but so were the problems. The tin sometimes bent, whistles squeaked out of tune, and neighbors occasionally complained. Yet the vibrant clamor became part of the Halloween soundtrack, unforgettable and unmistakable. Today, These tin classics are rare, replaced by cheap plastic noisemakers. And tucked among the jingles and rattles, one tiny device always had a mischievous surprise for anyone brave enough to listen. From candlelit streets to spooky records that made our hearts race, these Halloween traditions weren't just customs, they were childhood memories. Which one sparks your nostalgia? Or did we miss a favorite from your own neighborhood? Thanks for joining us on this eerie, fun-filled journey through decades past. If you enjoyed revisiting these vanished traditions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with friends who love a taste of history. Halloween's magic lives on in memory.